And we're back with day 4 of the Own Your Future Challenge. And of course, KK started us off one more time. And she says something that I reiterate all of the time: the fact that if you are here, you are part of the very, very few people who do instead of those who talk. There are so many people who started excited day one, they're all about it, they're ready to go, but for some reason, they didn't have the self-confidence, the self-value, or the self-worth to make it to day number 4. And yes, that does sound like a bold statement that definitely raises the defenses of a person who doesn't make it this far. And this is my words, not KK's words, but to say, you know what, this came up and something happened and I had to work, and, I've got things going on in my life and I can't put my life on hold just for this training. And the truth is, we've all got stuff. We are all doing things. 600,000 people started with the event, and I would bet there's, maybe less than 50,000 people left. On the YouTube, we started with about 30,000 people watching, and today there was about 17, which is not that big of a drop off all in all. However, it's still half, just slightly more than half. And I'm not saying you have to put your life on hold and cancel work to go to this event, but there's replays, there's my recaps. There are so many different ways that this information could be gotten if it's something that you really want to do. And obviously, if you're here listening, you are one of the people who are doing it. And there are so many others, though, that aren't. All they will have is excuses and justification for why they decided not to do it, and they're justifying remaining in the same place that they've been forever. And what she did say is, if you know you're meant for more, and if you're still here, this is meant for you. And I believe KK, she said, are you going to take action and do the things now, or are you going to be in the same place next year that you're in today? Are you going to do something a little bit different to get a different result? Or are you going to let another year go by and be in the same exact place once again next year? So we all have choices that we can make, right? And there are definitely things that can come up in our life that are outside of our control, but we do have the choice and the option of what to do for the rest of our time in any given day, right? And for those of us that made it through into day 4 and through day 4 and are going to come through day 5, we are making a choice for ourselves, and that should absolutely be congratulated. So you should feel really, really good if you are still here, because you are clearly ready to do something different and have a different result. Dean Graziosi came back up and he says, there will always be 2 voices in your head, one saying you're good enough and I know that there's more out there for me, and another voice in our same head at the same time saying you're not good enough. Who are you to think that you can do this? So we do need to visualize how good our future can be. And the thing is, one thing that's really good to know about yourself is knowing, are you motivated more by going towards like that compelling future that you really want and to accomplish the goal that you're looking to accomplish? Or are you more motivated by trying to get away from an uncomfortable place that you're in and trying to escape and not be in the same place? So some people are drawn towards a positive, or we're just trying to repel ourselves away from a negative. And it's really something to know about yourself on how you're motivated. So Dean then touched on the Story Teach tool framework, and this was his main lesson of the day. I think he also went over some of the homework that some people did. He gave away a couple of prizes, but the main lesson that he was teaching is the Story Teach tool framework, which has actually been probably the single greatest thing that I've implemented in my own personal career and really even life and in my business, because I am a very logical kind of person who I like to talk about the tedious little details that a lot of other people don't. When I worked in the retail industry as well, I was doing like supplement sales essentially. And I would talk so much about all of the ingredients and what they would do in every single bottle when I was talking to my customers. And I could just watch their eyes gloss over, and they would get so horrendously bored with the science that I was explaining. And so I had to really dial that back. But having a story teach tool framework, and I do the same things when I'm explaining someone how to like build a website or how to kind of put together a marketing material. I really get into the technical details of it. And that is very boring and very tedious to most people. So this framework helps you communicate the same information in a way that people can really understand it and utilize it, so that if you have the best information out there, it won't be lost because someone's too bored to listen to it, right? So Dean starts off with the story. He says, do you have that friend who, whenever you ask what the time is, they go on to tell you how to build the watch, right? And that person is 100% me. So he goes on to explain the story that you're about to teach for someone. The story is just a snapshot from your life that relates to what you're going to teach next. He says some people like me are too logical, and some other people are just too long-winded. They include too many details and too much. So it needs to be a mix of both. So once you have the story that's just a little snapshot, the teach then comes out to the principles from the story that can be explained. So this is the 3-step process that I learned while going through this event. So you need to do X, Y, and Z to get to the end. And then the tool is to give them something they can implement immediately, whether it's an exercise or whether it's like a homework or a like mission that they can do or something to implement, that they can utilize the principles of what's taught, that they now understand because they understand the story of where someone was before they had the tool and the techniques, and then how they were living life after they utilized those tools and techniques. So he did do a pretty good training on there. If you are at the point where you're ready to create training or a course or like a digital book or something like this, and I put this in my ebooks as well, my digital books, I use that exact same framework. And it just makes it so much, number one, easier to write because it gives me a framework of what to write. And it makes it so much easier to digest from the client standpoint, because then they can understand it quite a bit better. So if you're at the point where you're ready to take the principles that you want to teach and put it on paper, this is exactly what I would go back and listen to. Today's was one that you really need to listen to each one of the speakers depending on if this is the part of your business that you're at. It's really hard to just give a summary and a recap without hearing all of the context of everything they taught, but I am going to do my best. So if you're ready to do that, go back and listen to Dean. He actually did a really nice hot seat with someone that he pulled out of the audience, where he was kind of putting this into practice and showing what it would look like when you put it into a digital product, which was like essentially a digital course that he was creating for her. And the woman had a yoga business and she was kind of stuck. And so he asked her a couple really good questions. He was like, okay, so what got you into yoga? And she shared a really cool story about, like, honestly, and you could tell this wasn't a story she would normally share, that she's normally shared before, but she said she's been a party girl, and her sister kind of came up to her and says, hey, you might need to chill out a little bit. Why don't you just try yoga with me for a little bit? And by doing so, by getting into yoga, it just completely transformed her life. And she realized kind of some of the things that were lacking, that she was trying to, the emptiness that she was trying to fulfill with the party lifestyle. And so she thought she was happy then, but she really had, yoga really showed her what true happiness can be, which is a really, really cool story. And this is something Dean kind of picked out and said, yes, this is exactly what we're looking for. This is the scene that you want to start with. You want to start your trainings with it. You want to create a product kind of around the story. And what he really said that was big is you're going to have variations of the story. So maybe it's not the whole overarching, like, I was a party girl doing this, but maybe on one day I did this action and I felt so alone, so miserable. And then, like my sister said, I tried to do yoga and something clicked for me. Or maybe down the line, when you kind of relapse and have those old behaviors, I had this, I learned this, I did this, and then this was the lesson from that, right? And so the story, you can have one overarching story, and then you can have different lessons from within that story or different micro stories within that main story. And I think that's a really great thing to keep in mind for us educators out there. So he did a really good exercise, and it's definitely one I would go watch and kind of see what her process was and what they helped create. And then he actually showed how to use artificial intelligence to help kind of enhance this, to take the story that she had and to use that story to turn it into different tools that could help different clients. It was a really nice thing. But again, their AI is probably great, but I don't think there's a lot it can do that ChatGPT can't do, right? The thing to keep in mind, once again, whenever I'm asking my clients to go through this course or to kind of rewatch some of any online training, really, the number one thing I ask them to do is to listen to how the speakers are presenting and to try and take the lessons of what they're teaching and how they're teaching it. And Dean talks so much, he just goes out and says it all of the time. And so he says the number one point of this entire 5-day presentation is to disturb you with your inaction, is to make you so uncomfortable, to remind you so much that there is something inside of you that you want different, and that he has the tool to help get you to that place you want to be. The number two thing is to make you see that if you don't take action now, you are going to be stuck in the same place year after year. If you don't do something now, another year is going to pass and we're going to be in the same spot. The time will pass anyway. It really just depends on what you're going to do. This is the same thing you want to do for the people you're trying to help. So a lot of times we have to remind people that they're uncomfortable, that they are lonely, that they're in pain, that they're unhealthy, that they're sick, that they are not sleeping well, or whatever it is that is your specialty. You kind of often need to remind people that there could be a better result and that they once lived a life where this problem didn't happen. And I think that's probably the number one lesson I think many of us should be taking from these 5 days is if this is something we're going to help people with, we have to remind people that they need help. Or, if this is you, there is a better way to earn income out there doing things that you're passionate about. Now, with that, as we're dreaming about kind of the future and the things that we want and the things that we could do and this better life that we could have, the life that we know is out there, it's really easy to start daydreaming about like, well, if I wanted to help people, I could, I could get on big stages and talk to thousands of people, and I could have YouTube videos, and I could have courses, and I could have a book, and I could have all of these things. And then we start thinking about like, holy smoke, that's a lot of work to get to that event. How am I ever going to do that? And the other big thing we need to do is we need to dial it back a little bit, right? We need to start with one product and we need to start with one thing. And then we need to be consistent with that one thing. So, and I do think they did a great job with teaching us how to take this one idea and turn it into something that other people can actually utilize. He then brought up, so once you have your idea, once you kind of know what you want to teach, then the next question is, how do you get it out to more people? And that was what the guests of today were really here to share with us. We started with Rachel Miller, and she is a social media expert, and she specializes in Facebook, where Corey from yesterday really specialized with TikTok and video shorts. Rachel Miller focuses on Facebook and Facebook groups. So Rachel came out and she said, how many of you have a dot? What Dean called a bullseye a little bit earlier. So maybe some of us don't have that dot, but we know that we need to do something. And she helped us kind of maybe give us a more generalized idea with what we want to teach really quickly. Because you have to remember, as she was saying too, is that often we're very much looking for the person who's one step ahead of us, who has a little bit more knowledge, who can help speed up our progress. And she thinks you can be that person for somebody else, but you need 3 things to have a good business idea. The first part of it is this idea needs to have 1 million people in it. So you don't need to reach those million people or be the one for those million people. But she said her examples were something like yoga. Yoga, there are a million people in the world that do yoga. Divorce, there are a million people in this world who have been divorced, and you don't need to do any like research. This is just a gut feeling, right? Then you need to see, is there $1 million that are being spent in this category? So are there companies out there that currently exist that are making $1 million? Because if that is true, again, you don't need to make the $1 million, but to have a percentage of that, 2,000 from a million is a very, very small percentage that is really easy to get. And the third biggest key is, can you talk about this topic for 1 million minutes? She says, what is the thing you love talking about? What is the thing? And if this is something that you love just rambling about and you'll go off all of the time, this is the thing people probably come to you and they ask your opinion on it, or they intentionally don't ask your opinion on it because they know you're going to talk forever, right? So if this is something you can talk about all the time, and it's a category that people are spending money in, and there's a category that there are plenty of people in, it is a viable business that you can absolutely do. So then she goes into, how do you find those people? And this is kind of the core of all of these trainings. The thing is, it's so comparatively easy now than it's ever been because the barrier to entry is so incredibly low. She says, do you have a Facebook profile? Do you have a Facebook group? Are you in a Facebook group, much like the Own Your Future Challenge on Facebook? Do you have an Instagram page? Are you on TikTok? Do you have an email list? Do you have a website? You don't need all of those things to reach 1 million people. You only need one of those things. And again, she's reiterating, just pick one platform that you like the best, that you can show up on and be real. So what does that mean? What does it mean to show up on those platforms? So if you have your talking point, if you have your topic that you want to share, here's the formula of the posts that you're going to post. So basically, you want to create content that explains what is it that people want to hear about while they are going through their journey. So remember, the whole point of the knowledge industry is we're helping people build a bridge over the messy middle, right? I'm not sure if this is actually a training Dean has done already. I think it's something he's going to talk about tomorrow. But the whole point of, which is something he probably should have started with, but the whole point of the knowledge industry, so is what we're doing is people have this point. There's a big issue that'll happen. It'll be a divorce, it'll be a sickness, it'll be the struggle of starting a new business, it's the frustration of interpersonal communication, it's whatever it is that you want to help people with. There's going to be a trigger that they decide they're going to go do something, or something outside of their control happens to them, and there's this big messy middle where you have to try a million different things. You try and fail and try and fail and try and fail. It's uncomfortable, it's hard, and if you're doing it on your own, it's nothing but trial and error. Suddenly you start to get better, and then suddenly you're back at this better point up at the top. I actually call it the J curve of change, but that is just kind of the process that everything happens whenever there is a change. The whole point of us in the knowledge industry is we're here to help people get to that high point better by going through that messy middle a lot faster, right? So when someone's on that precipice of jumping into something new, what content can you create that will talk about what's going on in their mind, talk about how they're feeling, and talk about like just the everyday things that are happening at that point for that person who is your ideal client. You also want to create content that is, what is it like right before that pitfall? What are they experiencing? What is something in the moment that they need to be aware of? You also want to create content. What does it feel like when they're at the bottom? What if they've taken that jump, they've done it on their own, and now they're in the messy part, and it's only something you can describe because you've been there too. What does it feel like? Right. And so through all of these things, you just need a mix of photos, videos, and conversation starter questions from each one of those points. And that's all of the content really you need to make and put out on social media, because that's going to get you noticed. It's going to bring people to you. It's going to make the right people see you and say, this person understands me, and they're going to be drawn to you organically. But you need to post a photo, video, and a conversation starter, as the next speaker says, ideally something like that every day, but really as often and consistent as you possibly can. And once you start doing that, people are going to start flooding into your zone of influence, and you'll be able to, they're going to be part of your community, and then more people like them will join as well. That's basically everything she covered. She did say one big thing. She said, you know what's going to happen? Your first business will flop, and that's okay. It should be expected, and you should expect it to flop, but you have to get your first business out there. You have to fail at your first business in order to figure out how to get the stuff going that's going to work. Maybe your first business doesn't, but if you go into it, expect you're going to reach the moon with this first thing that you post, you're going to be disappointed. So, and this is something that I try and convey to a lot of my clients as well, is that it just has to get done, and you have to start doing it so that you understand the process of how to do it better and better with every iteration that you make. But if you expect it to be good and you expect it to win on your first try, and then it doesn't win, you're going to be devastated, and then you're going to give up, when really you just need to go through the process a couple times with an open mind and understanding that you're going to be learning throughout the way. And then eventually something's going to click and something's going to take off, and then it's going to skyrocket. But you can never get to the skyrocket if you don't put the first stuff out there, right? I feel personally that Rachel's part was way too short. She had so much to cover, and she was so good at it. She's a wonderful speaker, and I think she was criminally cut short with her time limit on there. So maybe next year's they'll do more. But the good news is, I mean, now you guys know about her. We can always go look her up. And she does have courses within the Launchpad course that they've created. So that's something to consider as well. Shailene Johnson was our next speaker, and she also did a very, very great job, just coming with a completely different energy as Rachel or Corey. And it was great to see kind of the mix of those three, really teaching the same thing in very different ways, and had some specifics on different platforms. So Corey yesterday, I think I said it a second ago, but Corey was teaching TikTok and YouTube Shorts and like Reels, that kind of thing. Rachel was teaching Facebook and Facebook groups. Now Shailene was really talking about the process of Instagram, and she covered once again how to get your message out on social media. So really you can do it, you can pay for ads, which is very expensive and getting more and more expensive every day. You can do it in person. You don't even have to be on social media. You can just go to networking meetings and try and do stuff person to person to try and sell and get clients that way. Or you can do it her way. And she said something that was actually really, really good. She pointed out that the people you see on social media making content already have huge followings and are probably spending a lot of money on advertising and getting their content distributed further, right? So it's important to not do what these people are doing, because it's not going to work if you don't already have a really big user base and a lot of engagement already. Starting off is a very different animal than it is once you're already big. She said another perspective, which was very interesting, is that social media is 100% an economy, just like any other, which means there's supply and demand. And she said, remember back in the day when you were kind of following people and it felt really voyeuristic. You'd be looking at their page and you'd feel kind of like a creeper, because you're like, what is this person doing? I wonder what they're up to. But now it's just completely normal and completely natural. However, it's much, much harder to get started and to build a following, because there is so much less time for us to be interested in these things. So we don't care about the life of someone that we don't personally know anymore, because there are so many more platforms and there are so many more people sharing. So what that means is demand is now very, very low for social media content, and the supply is very, very high. So we're technically in what's called a social media recession. I've never heard that spoken before, and it is so incredibly true. And it's a really, really weird place in the social media landscape. So, what do we do about that? And so, you have to think in terms of yourself. You have to think about what is it you're interacting with. And it's probably someone you either personally know, or it's something that is very, very valuable and very, very interesting that you likely would love to share with someone. And often it's also something very funny. Any of those things on their own used to be enough, but now it has to be both and possibly all three. So when you're thinking of content, like how do you make it valuable? How do you make it interesting? And how do you make it entertaining? So she also said that like herself and Rachel, they're in the same niche, but their dots are very, very different. Their bullseyes are very, very different. Your niche and your dot will actually change a lot. So don't get freaked out about it. Don't feel so committed to it because, again, like Rachel said, the first thing will probably fail. And so it's okay to try something else. And we also get bored and we want to change what we're talking about. You don't have to be locked into it forever. But the key is no one is going to follow you if you're just posting all kinds of random hodgepodges of stuff. You want to be very intentional with your postings. She once again says, you need to master a single platform. Pick whatever platform you want and then just be really good with it. You need to interact with it. You need to know the etiquette on those platforms. And she says that's the difference because when you have a team, when there's people posting stuff for you, then you can be everywhere because you're paying people to do that. It is not sustainable to be posting everywhere on your own. So just crush one platform. The first thing you need to do in order to crush a platform is number one, you need to optimize your bio and your profile. You need to make sure it reflects what you do. And you also need to post about what you do because you might have this beautiful, perfect profile, but if that's not what you're posting, then no one's going to really care about following you because they're not getting that valuable content from you. So you've got to, number one, really optimize your bio so you have a really good picture, a really good name. The one tip that she said was the name on Instagram is actually SEO friendly. So you can change your name and have a different username, which is pretty cool. Then you need to delete content that if a stranger sees it, it would be boring for them. And she says, but well, I want to post stuff for my family and I want to post stuff for my friends. And she says, well, is your family and friends paying your bills? No, make it look good so you're attracting the people that want to invest in your content and your life. She also says the next thing you need to do is you need to build trust and engagement. The way you do that is really being consistent, being reliable, and the biggest key, in my opinion, is engagement. You need to start showing up for your audience because people are going to post, they're going to have comments, they're going to want to have conversations with you. And what she said is that your following grows one follower at a time. And I think this is something that's so easy to forget because when you see someone with 1 million followers or hundreds of thousands of followers, especially when we're just starting out, it's easy to be like, well, that's just one person posting. I'm trying to get 100,000 people on here. But if you're not growing and you're not engaging with that 1, 2, 3 people that are posting and replying to you, there's no reason for anyone else to stick around. There's no reason for them to stick around. And then your profile is not going to grow and you're going to be in the same exact place, just doing this work and no one's enjoying it because no one's seeing it. So the key is that engagement. The other big thing that a lot of people don't expect, but absolutely happens once you start growing, is your audience really refines your content for you because people are going to like certain things and people are going to interact with certain stuff more. So these are the things you need to be paying attention to when you're posting on social media. You need to see what's getting likes and what's getting comments and actually listen to what those comments are saying because people will straight up tell you what they want to see more of and what they want to see less of. You, of course, have a lot of say in there, but if you're not paying attention to what people like, you might be completely missing exactly what your audience wants to hear. The other huge thing that she said was a lot of us think we just have to get on here and sell our own thing, that you're using social media to be a sales platform for you. But she says you want to really be selling everything all of the time and just sharing what's going on in your life. You want to be comfortable sharing just whatever it is that you're finding joy in kind of in your everyday life. You really want to be that go-to person that people want to see and whose opinions they respect, so that when it does come time to share your own thing, that you've already built up credibility with your audience so they know that you're someone they should be listening to. And then she gave us the 5 steps on how to really be that person to present your content in a way that's very engaging to your followers. So step number 1, you need to identify what a problem is. And you can do this with a poll. You can do this with, her example was a very ADHD thing where if you put stuff underneath something else, do you ever notice how it just disappears and you completely forget about it? That's an issue that's very relatable, right? So she's identifying the problem, and then she makes that problem more relatable as number 2. So number 2 is you relate the problem to your audience. So she says, I lose my leggings all the time because I put them at the bottom of my drawer, and which means I tend to only wear the same few leggings over and over again because they're the ones on top, and I almost completely forget the other ones exist. Then step number 3 is you want to reveal a solution. So she says, I found a new towel rack. And so what it does, I can put it on the back of my closet door and I can hang all of my leggings from that. So she sees them all of the time. Step number 4 is then you invite people to comment a specific word. Hey, if you guys want a link to this towel rack, comment the word towel and I'll show you where I got it. And then the key is number 5 is you build things one follower at a time. So anyone that makes a comment, you're getting the engagement, and now you get to follow up with each one of those people so you can give them that thing that they were looking to get. And then you're having a conversation, you're having engagement, and that relationship really does grow. So what she says really is that all of this takes time. If you want to grow it faster, you need to be more consistent and post more. She says, don't complain about a lack of followers if you're posting anything less than once per day. Now, you do need to pay attention to your mental health. And if you can't do it on your own, then you need to figure out a way to get help doing in this and probably find a way to invest in a team. But she makes the point, some of these posts are just her with her camera and it's 30 seconds and then it's done and then it's uploaded. It just takes being consistent and being in the habit of doing so. So that was Shalene. I think she did a great job. She made a lot of really, really good points and she was very fun to listen to. So Dean came back up at the end and he said, you know what? Yes, this does take work, but you don't have to do it alone. And what he really said was you can see, and which was true, because you can see how much excitement and how much joy these presenters have when they're up on stage talking about it and just telling us like, hey, this is a future you could have too. You just need to take some steps and some actions to get there. Dean says that hope. Oh, the other thing he said that was so powerful was, have you ever had a dream and you look back and you don't even remember that you stopped taking action towards it? Something that you wanted to do so much. And so once you stopped, and then so much time had passed and it was just gone, right? And he says, hope isn't a strategy. Too many people just want to wait until they're confident enough to start going after this, excited enough to post, feeling good enough to work on their projects. And that's not going to work because it never happens that way. And then it's not going to get done. So that's pretty much everything that happened today. Again, I don't feel like these speakers had quite enough time. And I realized that this is just supposed to be an overview of this whole industry and the way to do it. But I think that actually social media is one of the big roadblocks for a lot of people to get their products and their services out there. So I really do think they could have spent more time with that. The benefit is we did get 2 great social media experts, and these are people we can look up later and go follow some of their free content on their own pages. But it would have been nice to see more, but I do understand that the reason that there wasn't more of it, right? Tony Robbins is going to be coming back tomorrow. And honestly, I feel like I can already hear the stories he's going to go over because he's kind of told the exact same stories on the last days of these events for the last like 4 or 5 years. But I am excited to hear him. I'm excited to see how they're going to wrap up. Tomorrow is probably going to be a lot more sales heavy. But once again, like, I don't think Launchpad is a bad product, and I don't think it's a bad price. If you have invested in one of these products before, I doubt it's going to be worth it. It would be much more beneficial to come with someone like me, who's your professional accountability buddy, to really help you implement the steps of the things that you already have the education on. But if you've never done it, it's something you could absolutely invest in. And I don't think there's a better team on the planet to teach this stuff any better for the cost, for anything less than the cost of this program. But even if this with the multi-pay is also something you can't afford, you don't have to do it. All of this information is available for free somewhere on the internet or with people like me who are dramatically less expensive. So thanks again for checking it out. Again, I'll be here tomorrow, and I am excited to talk to you guys soon.
Have you ever started something new that you were really excited about and invested time or money into, but after doing it for a while, you reach a point and you just feel like, I have no idea what the F I'm doing?
There's that bubbling up of frustration because you're not quite as good as you thought you'd be, or it's nowhere near as easy as you expected. Then suddenly, a wave of guilt comes at the same time, and you don't really want to or feel like you can express this to anyone.
Having a dream you want to accomplish can be very sad and isolating. It's lonely because visionaries tend to see the world the way that it could be instead of settling for the way the world currently is, like most people do.
We believe this so deeply that we wrote a book with the exact 4 steps to help.
This guide is designed to take you out of that feeling of frustration and overwhelm and lead you into the calmness and clarity that you need to reach the life that you know in your heart you're destined to have.
If you've started a project or a goal but have stopped, gotten stuck, or are starting to feel burned out, this is 100% the book for you.
Go to idkwtfpodcast.com today and download your digital copy with the coupon code ACTION to get it on us, because we want to join you and be your supportive friends and partners throughout your journey.
It's only free for a limited time if you use the code ACTION by going to our website, idkwtfpodcast.com.
Check it out today and let's get unstuck together.